So we were working on prenatal asphyxia for a long time. So for more than 2 decades. Initially, we were looking at these people, unfortunate infants, what to do for them because the mortality was very high. So we looked at various factors which predict outcome. Like we looked at their initially Apgar score, then we looked at their neurological scoring. We looked at their oxidative stress. We looked at their DNA damage. Various things we looked at. All of them are able to predict the outcome, but did not really help the newborns. So then we got interested with the therapeutic hypothermia, thinking that something can be done for these. The most important thing is that therapeutic hypothermia acts at multiple levels. It reduces the anaerobic glycosis, it improves the ATP level, it acts on the NMDA level pathways, lipolysis, peroxidation, nitric oxide mechanism. Finally, all these end up in free radicals injury. There is too much oxidative stress, which causes the brain damage. So I will not go into the mechanism of cooling because all of you are familiar. Basically, there will be an induction phase, maintenance, and rewarming. My understanding is that rapid cooling, we usually cool within 45 minutes to 1 hour. Most of the babies within 45 minutes, we could cool them, then maintain for 72 hours, and then gradually rewarm over 8 to 12 hours. But this should be done at within 6 hours because that is the therapeutic window, after which you do whatever you do. It really does not help much because by that time irreversible brain damage occurs. And you continue cooling for 72 hours, and the temperature is also fixed 33 to 34 degrees and gradual rewarming. So rapid cooling, sustaining, maintaining temperature, gradual increase in temperature. So what we used to do is we use the gel packs, which we use for vaccine carrier initially. We cover with the clothes because if it comes in direct contact with the baby skin, it causes injury. So put out the warmer, put a rectal probe, put a skin probe, collect into a multi-parameter monitor. Continuously, this monitor will be monitoring the temperature, upper and lower limit, heart rate, respiratory rate, and oxygen saturation. Everything will be monitored. And any deviation from the set levels, it will give alarm so that it gives a warning to the people that something has gone wrong. People have to attend immediately. So the first study we did using this gel packs. Those days we had only 2 ventilators. Most of the ventilators were occupied with respiratory distress and acute cases where the mortality was very low and survival was very good. So we could not put hypoxic babies on ventilators. So most of the cases will be moderate and severe cases, but severe cases on ventilator who are shocked, who are debilitated already, we never cooled them. Although they were all inborn babies, there was no extramural babies in our any of the studies because most of them did not reach our hospital within 6 hours. Those who come, they did not have their Apgar score or ABG level. Whatever treatment given details were not there. Many of them were in shock or hypothermia. So we did not include any of the extramural babies. So it was so impressive to me, the first study, we could reduce the morbidity and mortality at 6 months by 21%. As Sudhin says, the neurodevelopmental outcome may not be very definite at 6 months, but definitely you can make the changes you can appreciate. So you look at we did the Baroda development screening, the mean score, developmental age, development quotient, the number of babies below the 97%, all were different in hypothermia when compared to non-hypothermia or our control group. Even impaired hearing and vision were also less in hypothermia, but it did not reach significance. So we looked at the combined outcome of death and developmental delay at 6 months, and it was showing significant difference or marked improvement because of cooling. You will be surprised, a moderate hypothermia baby will be in such a neurological state within 36, 72 hours. He will come out as if he had a good night's sleep and smiling at you. So that was the observation what we were making. So number of conversions were less and number of the anti-conversion required were also less in the hypothermia group. So I was so impressed by the cooling, although we were doing with the gel pen. So the next DM student came. So I told, why don't you look at the oxidative stress? Because it may be, I initially, as Sudhin says, there could be some problem with the data collection, all these things. But all babies I would have seen, more than 90% of babies I would have seen myself. But others were also seen. So next group of hypothermia and control, we looked at the oxidative stress in the babies. So as the oxidative stress increases, the antioxidant status comes down and oxidative stress level increases, the melandialdehyde and the MDA level increases. So at baseline, if you see, the antioxidant level is almost same. There is not much difference between the cooling and uncooled babies. But when you come to 72 hours, the uncooled babies, the antioxidant status comes down significantly. Similarly, if you look at the melandialdehyde, that goes up in those babies who are not cooled. So if you think something wrong with the brain before or the oxidative problems are earlier, how it will change with cooling. And if you look at the neurological deficit at this time, there was significant difference of 36% to 70%. So risk of developing neurological abnormality at discharge was significantly low in cooling. And we postulated this oxidative stress is the mechanism, probably the cooling reduces the oxidative stress has been found in the study. Next, the PhD student came. So I told, why don't you look at the DNA damage which we observed in hypoxia babies, whether cooling changes it or not. What something similar to what our Dean Sudhin was doing with the genetic studies. So we took the hypothermia and normothermia babies, looked at their DNA damage. We did what's called as Comet assay. So you separate the blood sample, centrifuge, alkali denaturation you do. Then you apply electrophoresis. The altered damaged DNA move away from the cell nucleus of the cell. So it will look like a comet when you do the assessment. So as the DNA damage is more, the head will become smaller, less DNA in the head, tail will become longer. So the DNA damage will move away from the nucleus and there will be longer tail as the damage is more. So this is just to show, this is a normal cell where the cell is more round. There is hardly any tail, in the sense the DNA is more or less in the cell. When the hypoxia comes stage 1, 2, 3, if you see, the tail will be mildly long, moderately long, very long. So by looking at the DNA damage, we can say that how severe is the asphyxia in the baby. So what Sudhin was showing in the genetic this thing, it is only the outcome. It is not the primary thing. That's what I think. And we looked at what is called a micronucleus. So in a bilog, the nucleus, there is something called micronucleus, small nucleus. Small nucleus, the micronucleus presence indicates cell death or apoptosis. So more micronucleus you find, there is more cell damage or apoptosis occurred. There was significantly higher number of micronucleus. We count against 100 WBCs and see how many have micronucleus. It's significantly more in those babies who are not cooled. We looked at even the karyotyping we did, the ring chromosome, the interchromated the connections, dicentric chromosome, all were more in those babies who are not cooled when compared to cooled. So we looked at the tail length of the infants, those who are cooled and uncooled, the control. At baseline, if you see, the tail length is almost similar, whereas in 36 to 72 hours, if you see, the uncooled one, the tail length increases. Even 72 hours is almost double. So definitely cooling improves the outcome. That I think even Helix trial also has seen that. Now percentage of DNA in the tail, if you see in the beginning, it is almost similar. Whereas after cooling for 36 and 72 hours, you see the difference between the percentage of DNA, damaged DNA in the tail, it is significantly increased. Even at 36 hours, it's increased. So what is happening is that if you do not cool the baby, you allow the baby to continue to have damage, and you are producing more hypoxic damage in the baby. And if you look at this is a bar diagram showing the DNA damage. The blue one is the cooled one, red one is the uncooled one. So you look at this thing, it remains almost same. Cooling does not prevents the further damage to the cell. It does not reverse, but it definitely prevents further damage. So if you do not cool, it continue to have damage. So that is the problem which I think Sudhin should understand. So now look at the comet tail length. What we did was this study, Sudhin was telling there is no study after 6 months. This we have followed up almost 2 years because he was a PhD student. He could continue to follow them up. So 18 to 24, the minimum was 18 months and continued for 2 years. We compared the tail length with the mental development score and motor development score. So as the tail length increased, more and more damage, the developmental score is different. If you look at the motor development score also, as the damage increases, the developmental score comes down. So we hypothesize that therapeutic hypothermia reduces oxidative stress and DNA damage, as shown in these studies, and it definitely reduces the neurodevelopment outcome at 18 months. And DNA damage and oxidative stress are the main mechanism which causes hypoxic damage in the brain, and therapeutic hypothermia definitely reduces it, whether you do in high income, low income, middle income, or no income, provided the case selection is proper. If you already pull a damaged baby and do a high flown study and record and analyze all these things you do, but basically the infant which you pull makes the difference. Now we looked at the renal damage. We also looked at the outcome, the kidney damage. When you cool and non-cool, there is a significant difference because there are many papers which have come whether we should reduce the drug dosage when you cool or whether you can give the same doses of the drugs. So we were interested in seeing whether what happens to the kidney. If you look at the kidney also, the damage is different in cooled and uncooled babies. Uncooled babies have almost double the amount of renal damage. Fortunately, most of the cooling kidney damage are mild type. The severe ones are not that common. We also looked at the myocardial function. We estimated their CPK-MB level. We had the troponin level. We did the ECG and echo with the cardiac. This helped. And with the cooled and uncooled, if you see, there is a significant difference between the cooled and uncooled babies. Next, we looked at the magnesium sulfate along with the cooling, because by this time, when Sudhin's Helix trial started, we stopped randomizing into non-cooled arm because our ethics committee was very unwillingly approved a large study based on Sudhin's study. We showed his study one after another, and they said it is still unconvinced. But after this, we have some consciousness, so we could not randomize them. This I told Sudhin also. We have stopped randomizing to non-cooling arm by this time. So we gave magnesium sulfate to this one group of infants. Other group, we did not give magnesium sulfate. Both were cooled babies. But when you assess the neurodevelopment outcome at 1 year, although it may not be that much reliable, they were slightly better when compared to the only cooling. With magnesium sulfate, it was better. But the problem was some of them were going to respiratory depression, severe sedation, and some of them have to be put on ventilator. This is one of the problems when you give magnesium sulfate. You may ask me, don't you find any side effects? But unlike Helix trial, our morbidity rate was very, very low, maybe half of what they have seen. So he was looking at the death or mortality, but I think they should have looked at the morbidity and should have tried to see why the morbidity is so high in Helix trial, and probably they should have stopped in between and checked what happened, which they do not do. So the sinus bradycardia and skin changes are the major problems which saw, and skin changes were seen mostly when we are doing the gel patch, but with the phase changing material, there was not much difference. Then we compared the complications between the cooled and uncooled baby. It is almost similar, except the sinus bradycardia. If a cold baby does not have bradycardia, that means he is not cooled. If he has got tachycardia, most probably he has got infection or shock or some problem is there. He needs attention. This you must remember. So there are the systematic reviews also which showed, which you all must have read, Jacob et al., which showed the benefits of cooling, and also another from low-income countries that Abbott et al. Has done. They showed that there is significant improvement in brain damage or neurodevelopment outcome when you do cooling. So that is the issue. So then we compared our data or outcome with neuromortality and neurodevelopment outcome with the Helix trial, and also the study which he was mentioning in Calicut. Except these studies, the mortality was low in all our studies. And if you look at the neurodevelopmental outcome, which was not done in that Calicut study, whereas in Helix trial also the neurodevelopmental outcome is better. So does Sudhin and Madam Sita Shankar trying to say that whatever little benefit the cooled babies will get should not get, or I don't know what is the concept is. Now look at should we cool babies in our low middle income countries or not, what Sudhin was putting. So my suggestion is that you should offer cooling to all infants if they come within 6 hours. They should have severe significant acidosis and also moderate to severe encephalopathy. What he was telling us, mild encephalopathy, we should not definitely, because it is labor intensive and it may cause the complications. So moderate and severe encephalopathy. I think with the neonatology in trained person in the unit, it should not be difficult to find whether a child has moderate or severe. Of course, it may be difficult sometimes, but it is not. And if you look at the Helix trial, they had a lot of proportion of the infants had brain damage, as he showed in the MRI, and also convulsion. And Sudhin, with a lot of experience, must be knowing convulsion does not occur very early in hypoxic babies. It occurs after 6-8 hours. So if you wait for convulsions, most of the time is bad. I think what a major problem happened is they did not have details of resuscitation. They did not have how they were transferred. Many of them had hypothermia, and more than 70% are outborn. That is why he is seeing such a bad outcome with this thing, which he should be able to understand. And it is not the DNA in the brain or the other thing. We have lower birth weight, we have more infection maybe, but they are not the major issues as I can see. And I say that you should not do cooling everywhere. You should have proper setup. You should have neonatologists. You should have round-the-clock monitoring. You should have radiant warmer. You should have proper cooling device. If you have a servo control cooling device, that is the best. But it is not affordable in many centers. That's the problem. And our experience with the servo control, what our Sudhin has given for a short period, and also phase changing material, there is not much of difference, provided your nursing care and doctors are good. You should have a good multi-para monitor. You should have facility for mechanical ventilator. So it should be a good intensive care where you can do cooling. Cooling should not be done in a peripheral level. And also choosing the patient is important. It should come within 6 hours. and it should have a proper protocol for cooling. If you indiscriminately cooling within 6 hours, babies who are hypoxiated at birth, not resuscitated properly, transferred in a poor condition, definitely helix trial will get repeated. In the sense, it will not show any improvement. So my take-home message to in the short time given to me is perinatal asphyxia is a very important problem. So our aim is not to treat perinatal asphyxia. We should spend more money on improving the infrastructure, looking at the high-risk pregnancies, giving them adequate proper management delivery, proper resuscitation, and facility for transfer into a center where they have high facility and in a proper condition. Otherwise, hyperthermia or hypothermia, as rightly said by Sudhin, will cause more damage. So therapeutic hypothermia with or without adjuvant therapy can reduce mortality and long-term outcome. I have no doubt, I am 100% sure about what I'm talking. And what has happened in the helix trial, I think Sudhin himself must be knowing, but he is not telling the truth. That's what I think. So anyhow, I'll close here. I want to thank all those people involved in my group. Most of them were DM students, PhD students, and other department people. Thank you for hearing. And if there is any questions, we'll answer it then. Thank you.